You were never imagining it. That strange heaviness in the room when she walked in, the way your spirit clenched even when her mouth curved into a smile, that was real. Your body always knew what your mind tried to dismiss. You called it intuition, maybe even guilt. But it was something deeper. It was spiritual recognition, a knowing without words, a warning disguised as discomfort. Every time she laughed a little too loudly or hugged you a second too long, something in you flinched. You didn't know why, not then. But God was already whispering the truth to your soul. Her presence wasn't clean. It wasn't innocent. That smile you kept seeing wasn't joy. It was control. She always knew how to stand, just close enough to seem supportive, but just far enough to never catch the full weight of your breakthrough. She'd congratulate you in front of others, but her energy behind closed doors told another story. When you cried, she comforted you, but part of her liked when you were down. She wouldn't say it out loud. She didn't have to. Her spirit said it for her, and your spirit heard it. For years you pushed that knowing down, trying to be the good one, the forgiving one, the one who loved without questioning. But you can't unknow what your frequency records. God designed your sensitivity for a reason, and now He's confirming what you've always suspected. You were right about her energy. The fake smile wasn't just annoying. It was an assignment, a mask crafted to keep you close, but never free. Her hugs were distractions. Her silence was loaded. Her interest in your goals only lasted as long as they didn't outshine her own. But the moment your light started to rise, really rise, that's when her spirit started reacting. That's when the compliments got quieter. That's when the smiles started to flicker. That's when her jokes had just a little too much sting in them. You weren't crazy. That was warfare. Not with fists, with frequencies, with intentions, with atmospheres she shifted when you entered the room. You've always been a disruptor, chosen one, and disruptors make hidden spirits uncomfortable. God let you feel it before He explained it, because explanation would have made you second-guess yourself. But feeling? That can't be faked. And now the more you awaken, the more those old memories start to make sense. The time she tried to compete with your softness, the moment she mocked your silence, the way she always knew the exact phrase to plant self-doubt in your spirit. That wasn't accidental. That was spiritual sabotage, camouflaged in a sister's grin. But here's the shift. The smile doesn't affect you anymore, because now your discernment is louder than her performance. Your aura is stronger than her pretending, and heaven is confirming it. You were never the problem. You were the revelation. You were the one the mask couldn't fool. And now, chosen one, it's time to stop shrinking from what you've always known. It wasn't the curve of her lips that unsettled you. It was the emptiness behind her eyes. The smile looked right, but it didn't feel right. It was like standing under a sun lamp, bright but cold, light but no warmth. For a long time you thought you were overreacting, maybe even projecting. She's just tired, you told yourself. She's just having a bad day. But deep in your chest, in that place where God speaks without sound, you felt the difference. A real smile carries spirit. It has life. It draws you closer, softens the air. Hers always seemed to do the opposite. It was beautiful to look at, but it left the room feeling heavier. It left you feeling smaller. God never wastes signals. He knew if He tried to tell you outright, you'd dismiss it as judgment or paranoia. So He gave you a sensor instead. Discernment. It was your internal alarm system, the unexplainable, knowing that someone's words and someone's essence don't line up. That's why you were always tired after being around her. That's why you doubted yourself more after her compliments than after her criticisms. She didn't need to attack you openly. Her presence carried its own silent sabotage. Her smile was a signal that she was still wearing the mask, and your spirit was the one catching the static between what she showed and what she carried. Every family has roles: the helper, the rebel, the quiet one, the favorite. She learned early how to wear the good sister role like a costume, because a costume hides what's really there. But the more your light began to grow, the more that costume cracked. She'd try to joke it off, but you'd see it in the micro expressions. The flash of envy, the tightening of her jaw, the eyes narrowing for a fraction of a second before she covered it. Those were the moments heaven was showing you. See? This isn't love. This is a performance. God wasn't exposing her to humiliate her. He was exposing her to protect you, because your calling required clarity, and clarity always rips the mask off. You weren't imagining the way her energy shifted when you walked into a room. You weren't imagining the subtle digs buried inside compliments. You weren't imagining the tension in her hugs. That smile was a strategy. It was meant to confuse you, to make you doubt your own discernment, to keep you connected to what was draining you. But now you're awake. You're learning the language of atmospheres. You're reading the truth under the surface. The same smile that once tricked you now tells you everything you need to know. It's not your job to fix her mask. It's your job to recognize it and keep walking. Because when light walks into a room, hidden things surface. That's what's happening now. Her smile doesn't match her spirit, and you can finally see it. And in seeing it, chosen one, you've already broken half its power. It didn't happen in words. It rarely does. Heaven doesn't always use lightning bolts to reveal truth. Sometimes it's a pause in the conversation, a sudden chill when she laughs, a strange dream you wake up remembering even weeks later. The revelation wasn't loud, but it was precise. It arrived like a whisper wrapped in lightning. That moment you heard her speak and felt something shift inside you, like a curtain being pulled back. You didn't know what it meant at the time, only that it hit deeper than it should have. Her sentence was casual, her tone was light, but it landed like prophecy. That's how God works with the chosen. He places weight where others only see air. The moment heaven revealed her spirit, it wasn't to shame her. It was to prepare you, because you were still trying to love her past her behavior, still making excuses for why you felt unsettled. But God had seen it all. He heard what she muttered when you weren't in the room. He watched the envy behind the smile. He saw how she tried to siphon your softness to fuel her own performance. And finally, he decided you were ready to see. He let you notice what was always hidden in plain sight. The timing of her affection, the selective empathy, the way her support disappeared the moment your light started to outgrow hers. It wasn't just a sister being difficult. It was spiritual positioning, and her spirit couldn't afford your expansion. Because when someone builds their identity around being the one everyone loves, your authenticity threatens their throne. Your very existence, unapologetic, aligned, glowing without needing permission, triggers what they're trying to keep buried. That's why she smiled when others questioned you. That's why she gave you backhanded compliments when you succeeded. That's why her silence always felt louder than her words. Heaven showed you what was hidden, not so you could fight her, but so you could release her. Because spiritual warfare is rarely about confrontation, it's about clarity. Once you see clearly, you stop surrendering your peace to confusion. You've always been the one who forgave quickly, gave freely, loved deeply, and God honors that. But now He's refining you. He's showing you the blueprint behind the behavior. Her actions weren't random, they were reactions. Reactions to the fact that your presence reminds her of the version of herself she abandoned. You didn't just trigger her jealousy, you triggered her conscience. And heaven had to show you this so you'd stop walking into warfare blindfolded, because where you're going, you can't afford familiar sabotage. So pay attention now, chosen one. God is sharpening your vision. No more apologizing for what you see. No more shrinking to avoid her discomfort. Heaven didn't reveal this to make you bitter, but to make you wise. What's been hidden is now exposed. And once truth is seen, it can never be unseen. Not everyone rejoiced when you were born, chosen one. For every soul that sensed light entering the world that day, there were others who trembled in silence, not with hatred, but with fear, because your arrival disrupted a pattern that had quietly governed the family for generations, a silent agreement to stay small, stay agreeable, stay asleep. But your spirit never agreed to that. From the moment you could speak, your questions shook the room. Your presence was different, and whether they admitted it or not, your sister felt it first, not because she understood it, but because her spirit remembered it. You didn't just share a house, you shared bloodlines, and in those lines were covenants, contracts, frequencies, some divine, some not. There are unspoken roles passed down in families, roles wrapped in expectation and dressed up as tradition. Your sister was handed a script: smile, perform, protect the image. But you were the interruption. You weren't born to play the role. You were born to break the mold. And when you started to question the silence, to outgrow the box, to heal in public, something ancient inside her panicked. Because if you refused to wear the mask, it meant the mask wasn't real. If you chose alignment over approval, it meant approval wasn't God. And so the tension began, not in words, but in spirit. You weren't fighting your sister. You were confronting the agreements behind her. God doesn't send warriors into comfort zones. He sends them into cycles. And your family had one. A cycle of spiritual codependency dressed up as love. A cycle of false peace maintained through quiet control. A cycle where fake smiles were safer than honest ones. You were the one sent to break it. That's why you never felt fully comfortable around her. That's why your joy felt like rebellion. That's why your evolution made the air feel thinner at the dinner table. You weren't being difficult. You were being divine. You were showing up with truth in a space that worshipped illusion. And illusion doesn't die quietly. Your sister's fake smile wasn't just about you. It was about preserving a spiritual system that you were divinely assigned to tear down. The moment you began walking in your healing, your glow started whispering to the family's shadows. That's when the tension grew. That's when her smiles grew sharper. Because light doesn't just illuminate, it confronts. And you, chosen one, are the confrontation. God sent you not to blend in, but to bless through disruption. You were born into the middle of a spell, a spiritual agreement of silence, guilt, performance, and your frequency began cracking it from the inside out. You weren't made to continue the legacy. You were made to rewrite it. A reaction isn't your fault, it's confirmation. Because spells don't break gently, they shatter. And so does the mask that tried to survive in your presence. She didn't need to raise her voice to leave bruises. Her silence did the speaking. Every pause in the conversation, every moment she looked away instead of celebrating you, it carried weight. Not absence, but presence. A presence of judgment unspoken, of envy unacknowledged, of energy withheld. You used to blame yourself for the awkwardness. Maybe you said too much. Maybe you took up too much space. But now you see it clearly. The silence wasn't accidental, it was calculated. A choice made not to comfort, but to control. Because silence, in the hands of someone who feels exposed, becomes a weapon. And her silence was sharp. There were moments when you shared your dreams, your small victories, your revelations, and she just nodded. Nothing behind the eyes, no questions, no joy, just a quiet that echoed louder than rejection ever could. At the time, you told yourself she was just tired, distracted, maybe stressed. But that silence, it was her spirit resisting the sound of your alignment. Because when someone is invested in your limitation, your expansion sounds like a threat. And every new layer of truth you stepped into made her role in your story harder to maintain. So instead of confronting you, she disappeared into stillness. But God gave you ears that hear beyond words. And what you heard in that silence was betrayal. Silence, when it comes from someone who claims to love you, becomes a form of gaslighting. You start to doubt what you feel. You question your joy. You downplay your wins just to avoid the void in their response. That's what her silence did to you. It trained you to shrink, to censor your light so you wouldn't feel so alone in the glow. But what you didn't realize then was that heaven had already decoded it for you. The reason her silence cut so deep wasn't because you needed her validation. It was because your spirit recognized what she was withholding: honor. And honor is spiritual currency. When it's missing, the atmosphere feels bankrupt. But here's what shifted. You stopped trying to earn noise from a source God silenced. You stopped begging for presence from someone who was only there to monitor, not to support. Because now you understand, her silence was never about you. It was about what you reflected. You became a mirror too honest to look into. Your glow became a frequency her false peace couldn't withstand. And in that tension, she retreated behind the mask of indifference. So now you no longer chase responses. You no longer crave confirmation. You've learned to hear God's applause in the quiet, to find validation in your own alignment. Her silence used to sting. Now it speaks. And what it says is this: I see your light, and I don't know how to hold it. That's not your burden. That's her breakthrough waiting to happen. And you've already moved past the silence into sound, the sound of becoming. Before you even knew what you carried, she felt it. Long before you learned the language of frequency, alignment, and calling, she was already reacting to it, not consciously, not in words, but in atmosphere. Because the spirit always knows before the mind catches up. You thought she was just the older one, the louder one, the one who knew how to take up space. But underneath that, behind the subtle eye rolls and forced laughter, her spirit was sounding alarms. She didn't see you as competition. She saw you as confirmation, that the prophecy she tried to forget had now arrived, and it looked like you. Chosen ones often enter rooms silently, but their energy introduces them like thunder. Even in childhood, your joy made her flinch. Your questions pierced the air in ways hers never did. And every time you were celebrated for something you didn't even try to earn, a part of her burned, not because you were arrogant, but because you were activated. There's a difference. You weren't trying to prove anything. You just were. And that being unsettled everything she had spent years trying to perfect. That's why she over-explained herself around you. Why her compliments were laced with tension. She wasn't responding to what you said. She was reacting to what you are. You didn't know then that your energy spoke louder than your words, that your peace was provocative, that your softness carried sword-like precision. But she did. She may have never said it out loud. She may not even have language for it. But deep down, her spirit recognized yours. And that recognition came with resistance. Because light always reminds the shadow of its expiration date. You weren't her enemy, but your presence made the performance feel like a lie. And the longer you stood in your truth, the more her spirit couldn't pretend. God will often allow people close to you to see you before you see yourself, not to flatter you, but to test their hearts. And hers revealed itself early. She saw your potential, your impact, your authority, and instead of aligning, she performed. Instead of covering you, she compared. Instead of celebrating, she copied. But imitation is never dangerous when you know who you are. The only danger was in how long you let the performance keep you questioning yourself. But you've awakened now. You've stepped into language, power, discernment, and what once confused you now confirms you. Her fear of your becoming is evidence of your becoming. Her inability to celebrate you is proof of the elevation you didn't even notice. Because before you ever called yourself chosen, she sensed it. Before you recognized the weight of your calling, she carried the weight of resisting it. And that's why the tension was there before the titles, before the revelations, before the glow-up. Because even in your silence, your spirit was already announcing you. And she recognized the arrival. It didn't start with an insult. It started with a joke. A quick laugh at your expense, masked as humor, followed by a smile that tried to convince you it was harmless. But it wasn't. You felt it. A strange sharpness beneath the surface, like the words weren't meant to be funny. They were meant to remind you not to get too bright. That's how jealousy often shows up in families. Not through shouts or slammed doors, but through subtle sabotage. A tone shift, a compliment with a hook, a smile that carries static. And your sister was fluent in it. She had mastered the art of cloaking resentment in kindness. Her words said, "I'm happy for you." But her energy said, "I wish it wasn't you." It was never about what you had. It was about what you carried, because material blessings can be copied, achievements can be matched. But favor? Favor offends the spirit that's still fighting for validation. And you, chosen one, never had to fight to be seen. You were seen. By people, by angels, by God. That light you carried, it wasn't rehearsed. It was real. And it made her smile ache with contradiction. She wanted to be happy for you. She may have even told herself she was. But her spirit had already decided, if it couldn't be her, it shouldn't be easy for you. You began to notice the way she responded when others praised you, the slight deflection, the way she suddenly had a story of her own to tell, as if your moment needed balancing. It wasn't random, it was spiritual. Because jealousy doesn't always attack. Sometimes it interrupts. It waits for your joy to rise, and then shifts the atmosphere just enough to make you second-guess your glow. That's what she did, over and over. A soft sabotage, dressed up as sisterhood. But here's what's sacred. You didn't respond with the same spirit. You didn't compete. You didn't mirror her shadows. You just kept growing, quietly, steadily, radiantly. And that growth became its own confrontation, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. Because when someone is jealous of you and you don't shrink, you force them to face the part of themselves they've abandoned. That's why her smiles got faker, her hugs tighter, her presence inconsistent. You didn't just trigger her jealousy, you exposed it. And now, chosen one, you no longer confuse that smile for support. You see it for what it is, a disguise that can no longer hold. Not under the weight of your truth, not under the heat of your becoming. Her jealousy spoke through smiles because she thought it was safer that way. But your discernment now speaks louder than her disguise, and that's why she's uncomfortable. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your light refuses to apologize for shining in places she tried to keep dim. You didn't realize it at the time, but the dream was a warning, not a nightmare. It didn't come with fear. It came with clarity, a stillness that whispered truth too heavy for waking hours. You saw her there, didn't you? Maybe not with her face, but with her energy. In the dream, she wore a smile, but her eyes shifted like smoke. She reached for you, but something in your soul stepped back. And standing just behind her, quiet and radiant, was a presence you couldn't name. Not then, but now you understand. That was the angel, the one heaven sent to protect your spirit when your mind was still trying to call it family tension. God speaks to the chosen in dreams not to confuse them, but to bypass what logic would block. Because your love for her ran so deep, you would have ignored the signs. So heaven had to show you through symbols, through scenarios that lingered in your memory like divine fingerprints. Maybe you dreamed of walking into a house that looked familiar but felt wrong. Maybe you saw a dinner table where everyone smiled, but the food was poisoned. Maybe you saw yourself running and she was smiling, but not chasing, watching. Dreams don't lie. Spirits can't fake themselves in the realm of truth. And in that realm, God let you see what was hiding under her mask. That angel didn't speak in the dream, but you woke up different. He didn't need to say a word. His presence was enough. It wrapped around your awareness like a mantle of warning. Watch her, not to hate her, not to expose her, but to protect what God was building in you. Because as your frequency rose, the assignment on your life became more visible, and so did the resistance from familiar spirits. That dream wasn't random. It was an interception, an act of divine mercy before your heart gave too much access to a spirit that never intended to hold it well. You kept dismissing it. It's just a dream, you told yourself, but it wouldn't leave. It stayed in the corners of your memory, resurfacing every time her smile didn't feel right, every time you ignored your gut, every time your spirit flinched. That was the angel's echo, not haunting you, reminding you. Because heaven doesn't warn without reason. And now you see it. The dream wasn't symbolic. It was spiritual surveillance. God was showing you who she was behind the performance. And now, chosen one, you understand why your sleep was heavy that night. Why you woke up with your chest tight and your spirit wide open. The angel didn't just warn you, he marked the shift. That was the night your spirit stopped being naive. That was the night heaven whispered, "You're not crazy, you're called." And now, the dream has become reality. The warning is no longer in symbols, it's in her smile, and you're finally awake. You called it distance. You thought it was drifting apart, life pulling you in different directions. But now, in the stillness of awareness, you understand, it wasn't distance, it was divine separation. God kept pulling you away from her, not because he was dividing your family, but because he was protecting your frequency. You didn't outgrow her because of ego. You outgrew her because your spirit started vibrating at a level hers couldn't counterfeit anymore. Every time you tried to reattach, something would shift. The plans would fall through. The conversation would go stale. The energy would feel off. And no matter how much you wanted to keep her close, heaven kept putting space between you. That's the thing about elevation. Not everyone is allowed in your atmosphere. You kept asking God to fix the bond, to bring you closer, to restore what once was. But God wasn't ignoring your prayers. He was answering them in a language you didn't want to speak, disconnection. Because the version of you that once tolerated her micro wounds no longer exists. The healed version of you can't be accessed by someone who's still speaking the language of sabotage dressed as sweetness. God wasn't being cruel, he was being surgical. He knew what her energy was doing to your destiny, draining it, delaying it, diluting it. So he cut the cord with grace, quietly, strategically. There were moments you blamed yourself. You wondered if you were the problem. Why the calls felt forced, why her responses lacked spirit, why her presence no longer felt like home. But now you see it. She didn't lose interest. She lost access. God pulled you into a dimension she can't manipulate, not because she's evil, but because she's unaligned. And alignment is the currency of proximity in this season. Heaven is no longer allowing access based on blood alone. Access now requires frequency, and hers was never willing to rise. That's why every time you tried to rebuild the connection, your spirit got quieter. That was God saying, leave it. Not in anger, in wisdom. You were sent to bless, not to bleed. And the more you aligned with your assignment, the more heaven guarded your energy. She may have smiled and said she missed you, but the moment you got close, the heaviness returned. That's not coincidence. That's confirmation. You weren't walking away. You were being escorted upward, And now, chosen one, you can stop feeling guilty. God was the one orchestrating the gaps, the unanswered texts, the awkward tension. It was never random. It was mercy, because the weight you're about to carry can't be risked in hands that smile but don't support. The calling you walk in now requires clean atmosphere, and heaven made the decision before you had the words, "She couldn't go. Not yet, not like this." You remember that conversation. Maybe you didn't at first, but now it replays in your mind with new clarity. It wasn't loud, it wasn't cruel, it sounded like concern, but it felt like interference. She said something like, "Maybe you should try something more realistic," or "Don't get your hopes up too high." On the surface, it looked like care, but your spirit heard something else. That wasn't guidance. That was an attempt to shrink your vision before it grew teeth. That was the day she tried to invert your destiny, not with violence, but with suggestion. And suggestion is one of the enemy's most refined weapons. You walked away from that conversation feeling confused, disoriented, like your dreams had suddenly become too loud, too big, too much. That wasn't random. That was her energy trying to distort your clarity, because somewhere in her, even if she couldn't articulate it, she knew your path was different, bigger, uncontainable. And in her fear of being left behind, she reached for the only tool she thought she had, influence. She tried to use her closeness to redirect your direction, but when someone's own alignment is fractured, their advice always carries a residue of their fear. And you almost drank it. You almost listened. That was the test. God allowed it not to break you, but to reveal what still lived in you. The part that second-guessed your own calling just because it came in conflict with someone else's comfort. He let her speak so you could learn to hear clearly, so you could feel the difference between love and limitation. She wasn't trying to destroy you. She was trying to keep you close, even if it meant holding you back. That's how inversion works. It doesn't always flip your life upside down in chaos. Sometimes it just shifts your compass 1 degree, and 1 degree off is all it takes to miss the promise. You weren't crazy for feeling heavy after that moment. You were picking up on spiritual misalignment. You weren't being dramatic. You were being shown something, because not every threat to your purpose looks like an enemy. Some wear smiles. Some share your last name. Some say, "I'm just being honest," when they're actually planting doubt. But now you see it. That day wasn't just awkward. It was sacred. It was the day your discernment graduated. You didn't respond with confrontation. You responded with alignment. And that was your protection. Because in that moment, your destiny stood up for itself. Something in you refused to shrink, refused to step back, refused to be remolded. And that refusal was divine. You didn't just survive her suggestion, you reversed it. You walked away not just aware of who she was, but awakened to who you are. And now, chosen one, no voice, not even one that pretends to love you, can speak louder than the vision God gave you in secret. She couldn't explain it, she wouldn't admit it, but the deeper you stepped into your purpose, the more uneasy she became. Not because of what you did, but because of what you carried. Your glow wasn't just new to her, it was ancient. It activated something far older than your sibling dynamic. Your aura didn't just disturb her preferences, it stirred her bloodline's memory. The lineage she carried recognized your vibration, and that vibration meant one thing: the end of the system, the end of the mask, the end of the power structures passed down through silence, guilt, and image. Your presence wasn't an evolution, it was a reckoning. When you walked into the room, you didn't just bring light, you brought confrontation. And not the kind spoken with words, the kind that moves through atmospheres like truth wrapped in stillness. Her tension wasn't personal, it was inherited. She had been taught to suppress, to maintain, to protect what looked good, even if it was rooted in dysfunction. And here you came, unafraid to speak what she was trained to ignore. You didn't follow the script. You didn't bow to shame. You didn't need permission to shine. And that made you dangerous. Not because you were trying to harm, but because you refused to be handled. There are generational spirits that hide inside smiles. Spirits of competition, control, secrecy. They don't always scream. They blend. They adapt. They pass themselves off as personality. But when someone chosen walks into the family, someone truly free, truly sovereign, truly aligned, those spirits begin to twitch. And that's what your sister felt. Her fear wasn't born in the moment. It was triggered by a frequency her ancestors prayed would never return. Not because it was evil, but because it was disruptive. And you, chosen one, are heaven's disruption. She may never tell you this, but she feels smaller around you. Not because you make her feel that way, but because your very being reminds her of everything she buried to survive. The courage she abandoned, the questions she silenced, the voice she surrendered in exchange for approval. And every time you rise, she's reminded that she stayed still. That contrast isn't comfortable. That's why her fake smile grows tighter. That's why her laughter comes with a delay. Her soul is remembering what her mouth can't say. You came to end what she learned to manage. You're not just her sibling. You're her mirror. And mirrors that show the truth aren't always welcomed, but they're always necessary. Your aura isn't arrogant. It's accurate. It carries keys. It carries codes. It carries confrontation wrapped in grace. And that's what shakes her spirit. Because it knows, with you in the family, the old agreements no longer stand uncontested. And now, chosen one, you can stop questioning her reactions. It was never about your words. It was always about your energy. Because your aura didn't just shift the room, it shook the bloodline. There's a difference between a personality trait and a spiritual agreement. And for a long time, you assumed her coldness, her competitiveness, her sudden mood shifts were just who she was. But now you know better, because God has trained your eyes to see beyond behavior, to discern the spirit behind the smile. And what you've uncovered isn't just bitterness or jealousy, it's allegiance. She wasn't just reacting to your glow, she was serving something that couldn't survive in your light, something old, something strategic, something familiar, not familiar to your soul, but familiar to the bloodline. A spirit that didn't just show up with her, it operated through her. The truth is, not everyone who claims to love you is walking in the same direction as your calling. Some people you share DNA with are secretly aligned with frequencies that were designed to resist yours. That's what made her presence so confusing. One minute she seemed supportive. The next, your joy irritated her. It wasn't just her being inconsistent, it was the spirit behind her being activated. That spirit had one job: to keep you small, to suppress your rise, to keep you tangled in guilt, over-explaining your light to people who were never meant to hold it. And she, knowingly or not, agreed to carry that assignment. You saw the signs. You felt the shift when you started praying out loud. You noticed how she changed when you started speaking truth over yourself, when you stopped needing her approval, when you started honoring your own voice. That's when the sarcasm got sharper. That's when the jokes got meaner. That's when her smiles started feeling more like surveillance than support. And your spirit recoiled, because it wasn't just her anymore. It was what she had partnered with. Understand this, chosen one. Spirits operate through access points: pain, pride, unforgiveness, envy. And somewhere in her story, something wounded her so deeply that she made a silent exchange: comfort over truth, image over intimacy, control over connection. And in that agreement, she opened the door. You weren't the threat. You were the interruption. And that spirit knew it. That's why the closer you got to your calling, the more volatile her presence became. Because the light in you didn't just expose the room, it exposed her alignment. But you are not at war with her. You are at war with the system that disguised itself as love. You are at war with the silence that masqueraded as peace. You are at war with the generational bondage that dressed itself in politeness and family roles. And you are winning, because recognition is the beginning of release. And now you see it clearly. The real danger was never her smile. It was the spirit hiding behind it. And now, chosen one, you've stopped reacting to her tone and started praying through her presence. Because when you know what someone serves in secret, you stop letting them sit at the table of your becoming. You thought it was rejection. You called it betrayal. Those moments when doors suddenly slammed shut, when people you loved stopped inviting you, when your own sister stopped showing up without explanation. It felt personal. It felt like punishment. But now you know, it was protection. Heaven didn't let her get closer because your spirit was stepping into something sacred. And sacred things require clean air. You were being elevated, and she couldn't rise with you. Not because she wasn't capable, but because she wasn't willing. Willing to heal. Willing to let go of the mask. Willing to celebrate you without secretly resenting what you carried. You cried over doors God locked for a reason. Conversations that never finished. Invitations that vanished. Plans that fell through every time she was involved. But what you didn't see then was how your future was being guarded by divine intervention. She couldn't go where you were headed because the spirit she hosted would have defiled the room. That fake smile you kept forgiving. It was becoming a doorway for familiar sabotage. And heaven, in its mercy, blocked it. God knows your heart. He knows you'd keep trying, keep reaching, keep inviting her into spaces she didn't honor. So he did what love does. He intervened. He made her uncomfortable around your glow. He let her grow cold so you'd stop mistaking her closeness for connection. He allowed the tension to grow so thick that even you, with your compassion and hope, had to admit the truth. She didn't clap for you. She studied you. She didn't support you. She scanned you. And when heaven showed you this, it wasn't to shame her. It was to shield you. Because chosen ones aren't just called, they're carried. And heaven doesn't carry you into destiny with contaminated hands on your back. Her proximity would have cost you clarity. Her presence would have infected your peace. That's why the door shut, not as rejection, but as redirection. God closed it because your next season required spiritual sterility. No hidden motives, no passive-aggressive jabs, no fake affection. Only truth, only light, only alignment. And the moment you stopped reopening that door, your life began to unlock. Ideas started to flow. Peace returned. Opportunities multiplied. That's how you know it was never personal. It was positional. God had to remove what you wouldn't, to release what he promised. You still love her. That doesn't change. But love doesn't mean access. Not anymore. Not when the price is your purpose. So don't mourn the closed door. Celebrate it. Because it didn't shut to keep you lonely. It shut to keep you protected. And protection is proof of assignment. The next time her silence echoes through your life, remember this. Heaven heard conversations you didn't. And sometimes the door didn't close because she betrayed you, but because she would have. There came a moment, subtle but sacred, when you just stopped explaining. You stopped softening your words, second-guessing your intuition, shrinking your energy to make her comfortable. You used to do that, didn't you? Water down your joy so it wouldn't sound like bragging. Hold back your ideas so they wouldn't be dismissed. Smile through her shade because you didn't want to be accused of being too sensitive. But one day, without announcement, you woke up and the weight was gone. You looked at your own light and decided it was no longer up for debate. Not with her, not with anyone. That was the shift she felt and feared. Not your success, not your glow, but your certainty. The moment you stopped explaining your vibe was the moment she lost control. Because control doesn't always come in force. Sometimes it shows up as approval addiction, the quiet fear that if she doesn't understand you, maybe you're wrong. But you're not. You never were. What she called too much was actually your calling unfolding. What she labeled different was actually your design maturing. And once you aligned with that truth, her smile lost its power. You used to mistake her confusion for wisdom. You used to think her lack of enthusiasm meant you were off track. But now you realize her inability to receive you was not your spiritual problem. It was your spiritual confirmation. Because chosen ones aren't made to be understood by those still committed to performance. Your vibe made her nervous because it was honest. And honesty exposes everything a fake smile is built to protect. The silence that used to crush you now feels like peace. You no longer crave her claps or her compliments. You see through the sugar. You recognize when a "that's nice" is actually "I'm threatened." And you no longer try to explain away her reactions. Because what used to confuse you now makes perfect sense. She felt who you were becoming before you ever had language for it. And that feeling turned into resistance. But you no longer shapeshift to earn belonging. You belong to the truth now. You belong to alignment. You belong to purpose. And that belonging doesn't require a press release. You walk in the room and the room adjusts. You speak and the air shifts. That's not arrogance. That's authority, spiritual authority. And when you stopped explaining your vibe, the fake support couldn't hold its shape anymore, especially hers. She wanted access to your softness, but not your strength. She liked the version of you that questioned yourself, not the one who heard directly from God. But that version no longer exists. You buried it the day you chose clarity over closeness. And now, chosen one, you don't owe her a PowerPoint on your piece. You don't owe her a script to feel safe around your presence. Your vibe is your assignment. And the moment you stopped explaining it, you started embodying it. Fully, finally, freely. You didn't ask for it. You didn't even know it existed. But the moment you chose truth over tradition, the atmosphere around your bloodline started to shift. You weren't just healing yourself, you were cracking something ancient, something passed down like invisible luggage, hidden in smiles, tucked into family rituals, buried under phrases like, "This is just how we are." You didn't see the curse, but your spirit felt it. The cycles, the silence, the shrinking, the way the women dimmed themselves and the men disappeared emotionally. The unspoken law that said, don't speak too loud, don't glow too bright. And without even knowing it, you said no. You were the interruption they didn't see coming. The curse didn't break with a scream, it broke with a choice. The day you stopped pretending. The moment you stopped laughing at jokes that hurt you. The first time you let your intuition speak louder than your guilt. Those were the breaks, cracks in the curse. Fractures in the pattern. Heaven didn't wait for a ceremony. It responded to your courage. And that's why the people closest to you started reacting differently, especially her. Because your sister wasn't just someone in the family, she was a participant in the pattern. Her fake smile wasn't just a personal mask, it was a mechanism of the curse. A way to maintain image over integrity, control over connection. When you refused to keep dancing in that rhythm, you became the threat, not by attacking, just by being, just by standing there, unbothered, unshrinking, unapologetic. She couldn't articulate it, but her spirit knew. Something in the structure had shifted. The rules weren't working anymore. The manipulation wasn't landing. The shame tactics were backfiring because you had stepped into a place they never expected you to find. Freedom. and freedom once tasted refuses to be forgotten. You didn't preach, you didn't argue, you just walked differently, breathed differently, glowed without asking permission. And that glow was a crack in the system, a threat to every lie dressed up as tradition. God chose you because you were willing, not perfect, not always brave, but willing. Willing to look foolish, willing to be misunderstood, willing to disappoint the ones who clapped the loudest for the version of you that kept the curse alive. And in that willingness, the chains began to fall, not with noise, but with presence, your presence. And now, chosen one, you finally understand why she started acting strange when you got healthy, why she pulled back when you got confident, why her smile faded the moment you started calling things what they really were. You weren't the problem. You were the portal, a walking contradiction to the strongholds, a living testimony that the pattern was never truth. It was bondage. And now, the curse is broken, not because you fought it, but because you refused to continue it. You were never meant to match her. That's what made her uncomfortable, not your glow, your difference. Because contrast is more confronting than competition. When someone lives in pretense, the most threatening thing you can do is live in truth. Your sister didn't envy your gifts. She feared your clarity. Clarity cuts through illusions, and your life, without trying, began to shine a light on the very things she was trying to keep hidden. You didn't walk into the room to outshine her. You walked in carrying wholeness, and wholeness exposes whatever pretends to be healed. You were chosen to be the contrast, the one who loved without control, the one who spoke without manipulation, the one who celebrated others without keeping score. That's why your presence triggered her performance. Her smile depended on conditions. Yours didn't. Her identity was built on reaction. Yours was built on revelation. And when the two met, the difference was undeniable. You represented the version of her that she never became. Not because she couldn't, but because she wouldn't. There is power in contrast. God uses it to reveal what words can't. You didn't need to confront her. You didn't need to call her out. Your freedom was the confrontation. Your peace was the protest. Every time you walked in the room with your shoulders back and your soul intact, her spirit whispered, "That's not how we're supposed to be." And in that whisper came the tension, not because you did anything wrong, but because your being dismantled her narrative. She had built her life on performance, applause, approval, keeping the family mask intact. But you were never called to play the part. You came to dismantle the stage. That's why it felt like war, even in silence. That's why the air changed when you spoke up. That's why her fake smile stretched thinner every time you chose honesty over harmony. Because deep down, she knew, if you're real, she can't keep pretending. And if you're free, then she's still in chains. But here's the revelation. You didn't come to expose her. You came to exist. And your existence just happened to make the performance impossible to maintain. You were never meant to be her twin flame, her mirror match, her other half. You were meant to be her reminder that there is another way to live, that wholeness doesn't require a mask, that healing doesn't require applause. Now, chosen one, you can stop wondering why the distance grew. It had to, because light doesn't argue with shadows. It simply exists, and everything false must fall back. You weren't sent to blend in. You were sent to reveal, to shift, to show the family and her what alignment really looks like. You didn't fail her by being different. You fulfilled your assignment by refusing to be the same. You were chosen to be the contrast, and contrast always changes the room, even when it walks in quietly. Something has shifted, and she feels it. The smile no longer works. The charm no longer covers. The mask she wore so effortlessly for years has begun to crack. Not because she stopped trying, but because your presence no longer gives it power. You've changed, chosen one. You no longer respond to the performance. You no longer bend to keep the peace. You walk in truth now, and truth doesn't flinch when others pretend. That's what's shaking her spirit, not confrontation, not exposure, stillness. Because stillness from a healed soul is louder than 1,000 accusations. She used to be able to shape the atmosphere with just a look, a well-placed comment, a tight-lipped smile. But now her energy hits a wall of discernment, a wall of alignment, a wall you didn't build in bitterness, but in boundaries. And when she tries to perform, it echoes, hollow, obvious, strained. Everyone feels it. Even if they can't name it, they notice it. The shift, the tension, the performance that no longer lands. That's what happens when a chosen one awakens. The room changes, the roles dissolve, and the people who thrived in illusion begin to suffocate in their own stories. Her fake smile worked when you needed her love. It worked when you doubted your glow. But now that you've stepped into your authority, the game is over, and the spirit behind the mask knows it. She tries to keep up appearances. She still says the right things, still shows up to family events, still flashes that practiced grin. But there's a new weight behind her eyes, because she knows the truth is catching up. The mask is slipping, and no amount of performance can protect her from what your alignment reveals. You didn't expose her, truth did. You didn't shame her, light did. And now she's left with a decision: evolve or unravel. You won't beg her to change. That's no longer your assignment. You're not here to convince, to fix, or to wait. You're here to walk, to lead, to carry the frequency of heaven wherever you go. And if she chooses to keep pretending, that's her altar to answer for, not yours. Your hands are clean, your heart is clear. You moved with grace, not vengeance. And that's why the glow never left you. Now, chosen one, take this in deeply. The fake smile can't survive the real you. Not anymore, not ever again. You've stepped into a level of clarity where performance becomes exhausting. For them, not for you. You don't even have to say a word. Your peace speaks, your presence speaks, your healed silence speaks. And what it says is this: the pretending is over. Let her wear the mask if she must. But know this, it no longer works on you. Because you carry something no performance can counterfeit: truth.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.